You found us through fly fishing. You'll stay for our passion and the community. Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Podcast.
Yeah, but he doesn't get it. How come fly fishermen don't get it?
You only haul with the short power snap.
Look for where people walk and the insides of bends and hunt those.
The roof blew off and the interior walls got sucked out. And the trees are just coming up. And I mean, he's clearly not going to clear the trees.
It is not a fly fishing story. It's a story about me trying to understand my brother through fly fishing.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today.
We've been waiting for you. Follow our guests, follow us on Instagram, and share this episode and the love if you enjoy this podcast. And we are live in 3, 2, 1. How you doing, Jake?
I'm great, Dave. Thanks for having us on today.
Yeah. Thanks for setting some time aside today to put this one together. We've been working with you on a few things this year, and it's been pretty cool. I think it probably started maybe through Phil Rowley. He's been our Stillwater guru for a while, and I know he's been connected with you guys. But I think you're all over the place, not just Phil, but around the country. MFC is one of the big companies out there that's doing some good stuff and fly patterns and all that. So we're gonna dig into the history of MFC, and we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about maybe some high level top patterns you guys use. But let's take it back to you really quick. Fly fishing. How'd you get into it, and then how did MFC come to be for you?
I love that question, Dave. Fly fishing for me was kind of a byproduct of another business I was in. When I was in high school. My mother actually bought a guide trip for my brothers and my dad and I. And that was in Boulder, Colorado, probably in like 97, 98, something like that. And so we all went fishing once, had a great time. And I didn't do a lot with it until I was, about midway through college in Fort Collins, got all my gear, put $1,500 on a credit card that I couldn't afford the payments on. Everything. I needed the fly box, the rod, reel, waders. Everything I needed. In my box at that time consisted of like stimulators, parachute Adams, elk hair, caddis, and pheasant tails. Those are literally the only 4 flies I fished for like 2 years, which was hilarious. And then I ended up, the short stroke of it is I ended up, in the horse business, training horses all over the West for, through college and after college. And I landed on a ranch in Kansas, fishing in my free time, but in Kansas, you got to drive. And there was a gentleman that was the husband of the ranch, the gal that owned the ranch. His name was Pat Smith. Phenomenal guy, goes way back in the outdoor industry, and I didn't know that he was at all connected with this ranch. So we became friends, and I realized that he was a writer and wrote fishing shows, from the 1960s, through the early 2000s. And we became friends, and he took me to the Henry's Fork in probably 2002, something like that. And it was kind of over at that point. So I ended up going back to the ranch after a 4-day trip there and, fishing with him, and decided to a change of life, change of direction. And that was the beginning of my time. So from there, fished a few years, worked odd jobs around Island Park, and then ended up becoming a guide in that area and guided between there, Yellowstone. So basically the Henry's Fork, from Rexburg up to the border of Montana, and then the Madison Drainage, Yellowstone Park. And then I spent 5 years in Tierra del Fuego chasing sea run browns with clients as well, which was awesome. So after whatever that was, 10, 11 years of guiding between those few places, ended up with Montana Fly Cup.
Wow. There you go. So that's, I didn't realize the extent of that. That's really cool. So, and the Henry's Fork in that area, which we've been talking a lot about. In fact, the giveaway that we have going that just launched today is actually for the Stillwater school we're doing with Phil Rowley, and back to that area, right? Because the lake fishing is pretty awesome there. Did you hit lakes much when you were out there, or was it mostly streams?
No, I fished both. And it admittedly, the further back you go in time, I think we didn't nymph with, 15, 20, 25 years ago, we weren't nymphing with extremely long leaders and as much split shot as we should have. And we were using yarn ball indicators and carrying combs and float.
So this was before the Euro. Was this before the Euro craze and popularity?
Oh my gosh. I mean, we're talking 15 years before that. If you look at 2023 now, the Euro craze probably hit, our shores anyway, 6, 7, 8 years ago, and heavily 4 and 5 years ago, as that kind of grew in popularity from east to west and from the Northwest into the Western states. But the point of that, when you asked about fishing lakes, right? There were always some old guys fishing the lakes, but it wasn't nearly as mainstream in the outfitting world to fish stillwaters while fly fishing. So, again, going back to that nymphing thing, we were throwing dry flies and then dry droppers, and then we were nymphing with these yarn balls. And then we were going deeper and adding weight and catching fish we hadn't been catching in previous years. And then the balloons came out. So we littered the banks with broken rubber balloons, then the thingamabobber, and then the airlock. So, the progression, well, along with that progression that we saw in specifically subsurface fishing, there were people branching out, into more stillwater fishing and realizing that we could catch, as many or more fish, equal size, if not bigger, and fewer people on the water. So to your earlier question, that piqued my interest pretty big. There was 2 or 3 of us that were kind of cruising around with little motorboats, trying to find stillwater game. And as we started to learn this, we brought our clients out there and had a ball with it. So I don't know, Dave, if it was as much for the customer's experience or our own, because to sit on the back of a little, 25 horse John boat and cruise around in flip flops and a coffee mug, rowing, 9 miles of the river was a really, really nice change of pace. And then over time, we learned how to catch fish a little better in those lakes. I did quite a bit of that. I mean, in that area, you have a lot of great lakes. The 3 that are obviously on the tip of our tongues would be Henry's Lake, then you have Hebgen Lake, and then you have Quake Lake. And then if you go north, from there, south from there, there's obviously more stillwater opportunities, but those were the main ones of that region.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's been pretty fun setting up this because we've got the 2. We're kind of doing the Euro School, which is going to be down with Pete down to the, we're fishing hopefully the South Fork and the Henry's Fork, and then we're going to go up a little bit north for Henry's Lake, and that's going to be cool too because I think we got a couple of great lakes. And I've heard about the Henry's Fork or the Henry's Lake being such a just monster fish, but you got to work. It's almost like you're steelhead fishing or something like that. Is that kind of what the Henry's Lake? Do you remember that? Is it pretty tough catching?
It depends on the year and kind of the state of the fishery, from year to year. But once you, if your steelhead fishing is as good as my Henry's Lake fishing, I would love to go steelheading with you.
Okay, maybe not. Yeah, right.
No, I think you guys will have fun, and especially with Phil and his team, you won't only be limited to stripping flies. And Henry's Lake lends itself as an unbelievable leech lake and stripped fly lake, but it also fishes very well, under indicators. So moving around the lake, finding different depths, water temperatures. You guys, when you find them, you'll find more than one.
Right, that's awesome. Yeah, and this year we actually have an ambassador, Darren Huntsman is going to be on. He is kind of more of the stripping, and he fishes. He's from that area, so we're going to have Phil and Darren on, and then and like we said, if right now at wetflyswing.com/Stillwater School is the best place if you want to check anybody listening now to get a slot, because we're going to have a group of people going over there, and that's the best chance to join. So so this is great. All right, Jake. So I think this is off to a good start here. I want to take us back real quick to MFC, more of the history, because before we jump into it, I want to catch that because I don't know the history. Can you share that? Do you know a little bit about how it started, or were you there at the start? I don't even know how it originally got started.
No, that's great. I'm happy to the best of my ability. I was not here when the company was founded in 1998. Adam Trina from Missoula. He was born and raised in New York State, but at a young age came to Missoula and ended up going to college in Missoula. And while guiding, I believe had some conversations with some of his fishing customers on what he really wanted to do. And his answer was, I really would like to have a fly company. He had been tying flies from a very young age, was a very good fly tyer, and wanted to bring, that commercially tied option to the market. At that time, there were only a couple, commercially tied fly companies out there. So no, it started in a drift boat in Missoula in 97, 98. First catalog was in 98. And it was, owned and operated and managed by Adam for years. So I came on in 2012. Yeah, spring of 2012. So whatever that is, like 14, 15 years. When I got here, there was a lot of really cool opportunity and good energy to expand the brand, grow the program. But looking back at what Adam had done over that 14 years was amazing. I mean, I've seen his first catalog. It was like, whatever it was, 6 pages, 8 pages of basic old dry flies. And to see what we are now from his vision back then was really, really cool. But I think the most important part of MFC and what it was then, and probably as much or even more so what it is now, is it's a company that's always been run, not only founded, but also operated on a daily basis by a group of us that have, pretty thick roots in the industry. So whether it was, operating, managing a fly shop or, outfitting, guiding, teaching, all of us have a background there before we came to the business versus vice versa. And we take that very seriously, and we operate with that experience very humbly as well, because not everyone knows everything, and experience, from now and in the past is not necessarily the experience that'll bring us to the future. So it's a good group of guys, right? We came out of guide boats, and we all have the mindset that we're going to continue to learn not only from each other, but from every other generation moving forward that spends a lot of time on the water.
Before we get rolling here today, let's hear from our sponsor. Bearvault has the perfect solution to keep your provisions secure while heading into the backcountry this season. Bearvault builds a rugged polycarbonate locking canister that keeps bears and other wild animals away from your food. Proper food storage is one key to an epic trip in the backcountry. Please head over to wetflyswing.com/Bearvault to check out this must-have solution for the outdoors now. You support this podcast and your safety this season by clicking through that link right now. And so MFC, since, like you said, the first 14 years, so was Adam there solely? Was it just like a one-man show, or did he have a team? Did he build a team as he went?
He built a team as he went, and I wish I could. I couldn't speak to exactly how that was the first year or two, but I know he had 2 or 3 people in a warehouse. He had a gal up front in the office, shipping, taking phone calls, shipping orders. He's had a couple partners over the years, no doubt, that helped him a lot. He spent a lot of time in Asia. Something really, really important that I'd like to mention about Montana Flies: we don't subcontract out our fly program. So meaning we don't order flies as a front-facing brand. We don't order our flies to be built by a fly factory that's not connected to us or that we don't own. So Adam, when he built the brand, also started his own fly factory from the ground up. And that's an unbelievable feat, in my opinion, knowing the business now, how hard that is. The barrier to entry is pretty difficult. But we do own and operate, and always have, our own production. So we control the materials going into our factory, the quality going through and coming out of our factory, the livelihoods and quality of life of our employees overseas. Everything is directly owned and operated by us. And that's been like that since day one.
Right. Amazing. So that's probably, I was going to ask, what was the reason for the success, because there's a few companies out there that are, I think, at a higher level. And, it seems like you guys are one of them, but that's probably it. Just having having not only owning the company, but having your finger on the pulse to know, like, when something happens, you could tweak and switch things. Is that kind of being a little nimble? Like, maybe you describe that. Is that true? And then what do you think is the reason the last 13 years you guys have been successful and grown this thing?
I think a number of things. Owning and operating the factory does, and you used the word nimble, that's probably the best word to use. It does allow us to make changes quickly and to be in communication with our awesome group of people overseas. We operate in Cambodia, by the way. So when I say, overseas, I'll say Cambodia. The company was founded in, his first factory was in Costa Rica, but it was not there for long, and moved quickly to Thailand, probably around 2000 to 2003 would be my best guess. So it was only in Costa Rica for a few years, then moved to Thailand. And as you guys probably know, commercial flies have been being tied around the city of Chiang Mai, Thailand since 1974. So that's really kind of a multi-generation industry in Thailand. And Adam had brought the company there early in its stages. And we were there for quite a long time, probably through about 2013-ish. We started to make a move to Cambodia just for kind of a fresh group of people that wanted the Thai flies. And we were able to go to a place where no one else was operating and find a fair number of people that wanted to learn how to tie flies. And we are now specific or only in Cambodia. So started in Costa Rica, moved to Thailand, was in Thailand for a solid, whatever that is, 15 years, 10, 15 years, and then moved to Cambodia. So I think that ability to be nimble, the ability to find the right people when we need to, know the people, get to know our team, keep them excited about what we're doing, keeps the quality of the product up on that side, right? Then when we see issues on this side, we can tweak, change, and maneuver quickly for sure. So I think that's a part of the brand success. And another part is, to me, is easier to think and feel, but harder to put into words. We do believe that what we're doing is fun and pretty cool. And we strive to make, what we do better every day. But I think the fact that we don't rest on the laurels of, what Montana Fly either was, is, or could be, we don't think of it in those terms. We don't think of ourselves as a big brand in the fly space or in the fishing space. We just sit here and play with flies and talk flies and gear and fly boxes and what could be done better, what could be done different. And then we fish in our, a lot in our free time. So when we think about our business, we think about, are we taking care of our dealers? Are we tying the best flies we can? And when anything like that comes up where we're not, right, we're making those tweaks and changes. So I think being product centric, very customer dealer centric of what our purpose is in this world has helped us stay, in a sense, very humble to just build good products, just make good flies, and make it a fair value for our dealers as well. So I think all of those things, we just enjoy what we do and try to make sure that what we're doing is working for the buyers of our products. So our fly shops and partners and dealers, right? We listen to what's working and what's not and try to make those changes.
Right on. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. You just answered my next question, which was going to be, how do you choose the flies you put in there? Because you've got probably a limited number of SKUs, or you probably adjust that based on what's selling. But is that how it works? You go to your fly shops and all your dealers and say, hey, what do we need to put in here? Or do you guys have a whole different process of like choosing which flies go up there online and out there?
No, yeah, it's all of the above. Everything you mentioned plus some. So we have, again, internally, we all tie flies, right? So there are definitely patterns that we spin together in our minds and or vices here in Montana as a group. We have an unbelievable, and let me say this, the most important part of what we do is our contracted design team, more importantly than what we do in-house. So our signature fly tire, signature fly designers have been fantastic to work with over the years and have been great partners to us. So we reach out to those guys, obviously regularly, and if nothing else, annually, talking about flies, what they're tying, what they're fishing, where we see some need for growth in our assortment of flies in our catalog. And we work with those guys an ungodly amount to make sure that we're using that resource as much as we can. They have a place for their new flies and designs. That works really well. So we basically take, people will send us, samples of flies throughout the year. And then towards the end of the summer, early fall, we all take a solid look at the flies we've received, and we work with the folks that sent them to us to say, yeah, we think this fits, or we'd like to see some tweaks and changes, but we love the idea. That's a huge part of it. Then our internal design work is definitely a part of it, and then we have a great group of sales reps that travel all territories across the country that pull information from the dealers. Right? What would you guys like to see that we're missing? Or tweaks and changes to existing products that you would like to see. So again, typical of me, a wordy response.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, we have, we have a variety of ways that we seek out and receive patterns to go into the book. And it's sales reps, it's fly shops, it's our design team, as well as, us in-house looking at these things.
That's cool. So it sounds like, it's a little bit of everything. And then I always think like Phil Roy, I think he's one of your kind of designers, right? Talk about that. I mean, Phil, he's been there a while. Do you know, well, first, is he, and then how does that work like with his flies? Because he's kind of the Stillwater guru. Do you guys meet with him once a year and just chat about maybe tweaks or new flies that he's working on?
We do. Phil is fantastic. And Phil and I go back as friends to the time that we were first introduced to each other at Montana Fly. And if and when Phil listens to this, I want him to truly know that I'm no longer drinking Old Crow from the plastic bottle.
All right.
And we had graduated to a little better quality bourbon in the glass bottle.
There you go.
Phil's great. He stays on me, hot and heavy as far as what he's up to, new patterns, tweaks in colors and sizes, tweaks in hooks. He and Brian Chan, have been friends for years. And those guys are kind of scientific about how they look at their flies. They don't guess what will work. They're trying to solve a problem, right? They see something at some depth and some specific time, right? Some hatch or a window of a hatch that they don't have a fly for. And they'll see fish feeding and not on what they're using and say, all right, they're feeding on some stage of this aquatic insect. Let's go after that. And that's how they've designed flies, which is really fun because they don't just whip something together and say, hey, I tried this and it worked. They talk about why they made it and why it works and at what depth it works or at what speed it works. So they're super fun to work with. And yes, Phil is in touch very regularly. He's a great partner.
Perfect. Yeah, and we'll give a shout out to Phil. Phil's the Littoral Zone podcast that he's working with us on the network here, and it's been pretty awesome to go deeper into the Stillwater stuff with him. So, well, let's hear about. So you have a ton of flies. I mean, we could probably talk the rest of the time here about all the flies, but I'm curious on a couple other things that we see out there. Like we're doing this giveaway event with you guys, and it's always like putting out something to give away, and we're giving away a box of flies, and you also see your big box. Talk about your fly boxes you guys use. Is there something unique about those? I know you have maybe some artist kind of designs, but talk about what folks would get if they wanted to get some cool fly box. Is that something you focus on?
Yeah, you bet. The box you're talking about, the quote unquote the big box that we called the boat box, and that was designed in 2011, 10 and 11, and then came to market in 2012. And we've had a few iterations of it since. But so that box has been, being sold by MFC for over whatever that is, 11 years now. Great fly box. It was built to be kind of the box that every guide would want to have in the boat. It's made from a super durable ABS plastic, stainless steel hinge pins. It just was meant to be a burly box that could hold more flies than any fly box that had been built up to its time.
Right. And that's the cool thing about the boat box. The reason why it's so cool is that, you got all these boxes, a lot of us have whatever tens, whatever hundreds of boxes, but this is one box. And that's the cool thing. Like if you're on a boat, have this big boat box, you could have like all your flies for that day or that whatever trip in this one box. Is that kind of the idea on the boat box where you just have it all in one?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. You're going to take one boat box or two with you. And if you can't fit everything you need in two of those boxes, right, we're probably doing something wrong. You throw the center leaf inside of it, and you basically have 4 different sections of 8x11, 8x10, foam to be able to load flies up. So you have streamers on 2 of those things. You put a few hundred dries on a third side, and 500 or 800 nymphs on a fourth side. You have nymphs, dries, and streamers, for a month, for whatever. And then oftentimes we'll have, guys will have a second box, or some guys have 10 or 15 of these things, but having one to load your saltwater flies in, obviously those flies are substantially bigger. So they're great to throw on a flat skiff. You throw it under your seat and you have, hundreds of your permit bonefish, tarpon, inshore, offshore, anything you need to bring, you got room for it. So that was the idea of the box, and it has held true to that time. Now, beyond the boat box, we are solving some problems that we found. The boat box was outstanding when you want to throw it in a boat, throw it in the back of the truck, but the traveling angler, wants to tie everything up into one waterproof gear bag. So we bought or acquired Plan D fly boxes about a year ago. And what we liked about that brand was it is truly the burliest fly box we've ever seen as far as construction. And we were told they were tough, the Plan D boxes. So we decided to run over one with a half-ton Chevy. And the rear wheels didn't break the box, so we backed up farther and ran over it with the front of the truck, of course, under where the engine sits. And it also did not crush the box. So we were super pumped on this idea and thought, all right, we can expand this. These are great quality boxes with some really cool and innovative designs. But what is that part of the market we haven't quite hit yet? and it's the larger fly box for the daily backpacker and or the traveling angler that would like to tie these things into a gear bag. So it's going to be a little smaller than the boat box, a little bigger than the average box on the market, and that'll be the next line of Plan Ds that are currently in development.
That's it. Cool. So you got something coming. That was I wanted to ask you too, because I know your website, as we're speaking, is under construction. But as soon as that's fixed, well, let's just say that as soon as that's all updated and ready to roll, what would people expect to see on that site? Is that more geared towards consumers, or more the industry folks, shops, and things like that?
Yeah, that's a new question for us to answer, because we've always talked about a kind of rebirth of our website, but what to expect out of it is definitely the key. We're very business to business or wholesale specific, and definitely dealer centric. So we currently don't sell our products direct to the consumer, although we would love to be able to reach more people. In some ways, you could say at the time of visiting a website and seeing something. But we believe the relationship with independent owned retail, the Fly Fishing Pro Shop, is an unbelievably important tool in our world for the consumer to be able to find not only the products they need, but the education that they need to pick those products, how to use them, when to use them, and so forth. So our website, to your question, will be a consumer-facing site that we really hope to be a landing page that envelops the spirit of who we are, what fly fishing is, and specifically what it means to Montana Fly Company. We want that to be a place where someone can go check out our products, see videos on how to use our products. We're really looking forward to linking a lot of video content through our partners, design team, all of our signature tires, how to tie knots, what fly lines to use in a given situation, how to cast in a given condition. We're a fly company. We don't even sell rods, but we love to fish, right? So we want people to see our website. In the future, of course, it's going to take years to develop the site into that sort of a space, but we want it to be a place where people can enjoy fly fishing on a serious level with good information across the board, but also to have a lot of fun with it. One of my favorite things to do is show bloopers. So I'm hoping that our website not only shows how people in the industry and people that are using our products, people that are developing our products, use them in the right ways. I'm hoping to have a really fun place to show the use of products in accidental and wrong ways as well. So, the idea, Dave, is that it should be a place to be able to go see MFC, see who we are, check out our products, but also use it as a resource to find and dive into other places and other aspects of fly fishing, that they wouldn't find elsewhere.
Nice. Sounds like, a great resource. And this, when it's up, will it still be mfcfishing.com? Will that be the website?
Yep, it'll be mfcfishing.com. That's right.
Oh, perfect. So this will be great. So yeah, we'll put a link out to that, and then when it's live, people can take a look, and maybe it'll be live. Again, we'll speak like 2 or 3 years in advance, so somebody will be listening now 3 years from now, and they will be able to click on it and see exactly what you just said to see what it looks like, which is pretty awesome.
That'll be really fun, and then we can maybe do another podcast and go, what happened with that website?
Right, yeah, we'll check back with you.
No doubt. The pie does seem like it's floating a little high in the sky right now to get to that end game that we discussed, but we should have something, up and rolling relatively short.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Well, and you have these flies, so that's obviously the big thing you do, are all these flies. So if people are out there, would they just be going to, any shop? There's probably some partners you have, things like that, but is that the best way? How would people track down to find out where you're at and how to find your stuff if they want to reach out and, pick up some of your flies?
Yeah, no, that's great. And that's going to specifically, that will come through, that website. We'll have a really cool interactive a dealer locator that allows people to kind of interact, geotag style with where they are and what dealers we work with in those given areas.
Okay, so on the flies, it's always interesting. We all have fly boxes. It seems like the fly is always the thing where, okay, do we have the right fly? How do we, you mentioned it before, matching the hatch etymology. There's a lot of questions. But for you guys, are there some, styles of flies, types of flies, names that you think or you hear a lot of, or like top sellers, or just give us a little bit of a primer on what you have out there for flies? Yeah,
you bet. MFC in its earlier days, as we spoke to its, the company's history earlier, coming out of Missoula, was very centric to standard, and you could say in its day, innovative dry flies. Foam dry flies were becoming more and more popular in those years. And now we think of foam as synonymous with a lot of dry flies, but it wasn't at that time. So yeah, innovative, but on the dry fly side. And as over the years, of course, how we fish, how everyone's fishing, the styles used, the flies used, those have evolved, and we're changing, with those trends. So generally it's gone from, a dry fly centric company to an assortment of more and more subsurface stuff, really cool, nymphs across the hatch spectrum. And then also, as you had mentioned about the, kind of Euro nymphing earlier in our conversation, that's kind of hit the U.S., by storm over the last 5 or 6, 7 years, 5, 6 years. And so we've definitely moved heavily into the development of those flies. The fun part is always what we're missing and what the future is, like what's next. So we came out with this, with the Sparkle Minnow, and that's been one of our most successful patterns of the last 25 years. That's the cone-headed Sparkle Minnow, also known as bling in a lot of circles, was kind of like the flashy fly that was, 3.5 inches long with a tungsten cone. It would dive, it would flash, it would kick and move. And that's a fly that's synonymous, with like searching with a streamer. And as we built out that streamer program, we've been lucky enough to be able to work with some phenomenal streamer tires. Kelly Galloup is an unbelievable fly designer, unbelievable guy. I've known him for a long time, and he trusted us to take over his flies probably about 2016 would be my guess. And we thought we could knock these flies out within a year. And he said, no, Jake, it'll take 3. And it took every bit of 3 years. But that really propelled us to really move into that streamer space. So when we were able to take some of the cool streamers we already had and then work with Kelly on his entire assortment, it changed the game for us on how we tie streamers, how we control the quality of specifically, hair heads on streamers, trimming hair on heads, and working with articulation points in our flies. And Kelly's been phenomenal in working through those issues with us over the years. But so we made a big push and said, well, if we're tying all of these flies, let's look to be the place to go if you want to streamer fish. And streamer fishing became really popular for a variety of reasons. But, stripping flies and watching bigger fish chase flies is pretty fun, Dave. I don't care who you are, right?
For sure.
So we decided to make a push to be this, if you're looking for trout streamers, look to MFC. And we made a substantial push to do that. And again, I'm going to miss some names here, but we work with Rich Strolis, who has some, phenomenal stream patterns and has for years. Again, I feel bad because during this conversation, I'm going to miss a bunch of guys. But we've had a lot of fun with that. And we have 3 or 4 new, designers new to us that we're able to be working with now, and more we're talking to come over and do their streamers with us. So, that was definitely a focus for the last, 7, 8, 9 years, was to make that push in the streamer world. And our direction now, given I'm still on track with our question about kind of flies and fly and so forth, we're really excited to play a little bit more and a little bit deeper in the smallmouth world. Right? This fish lives in 48 or 49 of our states. You can catch them on a 3-weight. You can catch them on it with different gear in different areas and different sizes on a 7-weight, and literally spread across the country. They're hardy fish. They live in a very wide range of temperature and environment, which of course we love, just because we know that species is going to be around to throw flies for. And we have some great partners throughout the Southeast, the Northeast, and the Midwest specifically, in these flies. And talk about a new horizon. They're not all radically different, but they're purpose built. I want this fly to do that. I want it to sit in the water like this, or I want it to kick its tail when the head moves like this. So it's really fun to use the techniques that our tires in Cambodia have been, honing for years, but in a completely new world for us, which is, that bass world.
Nice. And the smallmouth, I think that's interesting because there's a few ways you can, if you think about the website again, you have things listed like dry fly fishing, wet fly fishing, all the categories. And then you've got it by species too, right? You can say, okay, here's smallmouth. Here's, some flies you need for smallmouth. I guess that's the thing. I mean, do you guys, as you look out, say the next year or 5 or so, are you thinking like we're going to have these categories of all these species and then we're going to be knocking those off the list, including maybe saltwater, things like that?
Exactly. And because a lot of the tying techniques used in, let's call it anything that you strip, any fly that you make move in the water. So whether it's a streamer moving into the bass, the bass flies, given they're built to be stripped. And in the saltwater world, the tying techniques are very similar for a lot of these patterns. So we're expanding in salt and that kind of cold water and warm water bass, at the same time. That happened this year. We're launching some new patterns in those realms, as well as the next, 3 to 5. I think you'll see some focus from MFC in those places. But to bring that back to the website, yeah, I think the sky is the limit. And to your point, yes, that is exactly what we're thinking. Not 1 year out, but maybe that 3 to 5 view is what it takes to actually get there. But yeah, let's look at it by species, techniques for those species, and then kind of cross-pollinating those techniques. So, typically one person, say, has always fished topwater. One person's always fished subsurface. All of a sudden, you stop moving the subsurface fly, and you get bit, maybe even more than you did when you were moving the fly. And then you're stripping your slider, and then all of a sudden, you cut the belly off your slider, and you strip it slower, and you get bit again, maybe even more than you were before. So, that idea of different techniques and cross-pollinating those techniques from species to species, I think would be really, really fun information for everyone interested in fly fishing that they would hopefully find on our site in the future.
Yeah, I could see that. That would be really cool to have since you have all the flies, you could have something like, musky fishing. Okay, here's musky fishing, here's the flies, and then here's the shops, locally, or, narrow in on where you are, like you said, the geolocation. Like, okay, here's where I need to go to do the musky or the smallmouth. And we just had an episode of Chad Johnson was on. I think he knows Kelly and the crew. He's another one of those streamer guys down out of like the White River, kind of more southern part. And yeah, he was talking about exactly what you're saying. I mean, his flies are specific to, he was describing how there's these people fishing for trout, like bait fishing, and they're hooking a lot of trout and like wounding them, and they're wounding off like wounded. And he was talking about how his flies are imitating that wounded trout, so it's like very specific. Do you guys get down to the weeds that far on this stuff?
We absolutely do. And then you got to make sure you have your life jacket on to get out of those weeds, because you can live in them, and we know what that's like, right? You get buried in those weeds and you can't get out of them. Chad, I don't know Chad yet well personally. We do tie Chad's flies now, and I haven't been able to get down and meet him myself. A couple of our guys on the team have.
Well, he's got one. You mentioned one of them, or you mentioned Kelly Galloup, so he told the story. We'll put a link in the show notes to this one, but he's got one fly called the Big Johnson.
Yes, he does.
I'm not sure if that's in your lineup, but that's, of course, Kelly Galloup helped to name that one. But apparently, it's just one of those game-changing flies. It just works really well. But yeah, again, I think the naming thing is, well, how do you guys look at the naming thing? Is that something where it's a big part of your fly process? There can be issues around fly names, right?
Yeah,
politically correctness, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we understand that completely. And there's two sides to that, right? Like, yes, you have some flies like that may be called, the Big Johnson, a handful of flies from Kelly. You look at the name and you can have a reaction to those. But at the same time, there's a lot of fun there in what comes up in conversation when you're fishing that fly, when you're watching fish, chase that fly or eat that fly, right? Those emotions that come up when that happens. And oftentimes that's, kind of how these names pop out. I actually guided the gal that named some of Kelly's flies. That was
Oh, really?
I had no idea. And about midway through the day, she's telling me these stories about this guy, Kelly Galloup, that she'd fished with, and how she named this fly the Sex Dungeon. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. You named that fly? She's like, yeah, who do you think named it? I'm like, I thought Kelly named it. And I'm not sure if he would contest that.
Right. We'll have to ask him.
Yeah, that was, you should ask him. And that was the conversation that came up in my boat. I mean, we're probably talking like, I don't even know, 2007, 8, 9, whatever year that would have been. But hilarious, right? So the point is, these fly names, especially when they're a little bit off-piste, if you will, often aren't even coming from the way, coming out the way we thought they would have, or do they mean what they meant? So we try to walk that line and be very careful, right? We don't want offense out there in the world or anything that's truly something that's degrading, towards anybody, but trying to also, keep some of that fun alive when that name comes out of someone's mouth at some point, they slap it on that fly. We don't want to be too careful to where everything is so muted where it's almost boring and you don't get a bit of laughter when someone says, "Hey, what's that fly called?" This is Kelly's butt monkey.
Is that actually a fly?
Oh yeah, has been for years.
Oh right. Oh, didn't know about that. So there you go.
Yeah, totally. Then feel free to scratch it if you need to. But that like you said, keeping it fresh, keeping it fun. We do a lot of fly names that are kind of more workhorse names, right? Very rudimentary names. This is what this fly is, and this is its color. And then we have some guys that really like to have some fun with the name.
Yeah. What would be another? That one is pretty classic. What would be another one? Anything else from anybody that sticks out as a popular fly or a name, especially like a name that just pops?
Well, yeah, and I'll go to one of our old bestsellers, that the company's ever had. That was the Purple Haze.
Oh yeah,
and that fly was named. That fly had to have been named back in the, I would imagine, early to mid '90s.
Oh right,
yeah, by Andy Carlson, still guiding fishing outside of Missoula.
Oh wow, yeah, the Purple Haze is a massive, great, huge. Everybody knows that pattern.
Yeah, no, totally. You can buy them from other places, but they're not the same. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's essentially it's kind of like a purple hare's ear sort of thing.
Yeah, it's, if you were to compare it to another fly, you'd say it's a parachute Adams. And years ago, Andy tied it with purple spanflex for a body. And I don't know why that works better than a shiny floss in a purple color or purple thread or purple ice dubbing, but it doesn't. And no matter how you try to tie that fly, there's no thorax. The material it's a purple, spandex rubber leg tied through the entire body. If you put a thorax on it of dubbing, it doesn't work the same. If you try to use purple thread for the body, they work. They're fine, but they don't work the same. So that fly is all about that purple spandex body. And year in and year out, it's in our top 10 list every single year.
It is. And I was way off on the Purple Haze. I was thinking hare's ear, yeah, but this is a parachute Adams type fly with a parachute.
Yep, exactly.
Gotcha. Yeah, and the Purple Haze is good. And so the naming, I think one thing, and we've talked about this a little bit before, but I think part of the naming is, you think of the comedy thing, because I've listened to some comedy, podcasts out there. I've heard these guys talk about it, how, like in the 80s, Eddie Murphy, I don't know if you remember his stuff, but the guy had these like serious, it was funny, but it was stuff that you probably couldn't do now.
Yeah.
Just because it's so, and I think maybe there's some of that same stuff with fly naming, right? There's probably just some names you wouldn't do these days just because it's a different, atmosphere and where there's more thoughts and, like you said, diversity, inclusion, and all that stuff. But no, it's good. I think that it's hard to beat these names because once something resonates, it's just like the Purple Haze. Like it's just instantly, and I'm sure your sales go way up, right, when you get the right name.
Yeah, no, for sure. And as you know, let's use the Purple Haze as an example. That fly's not offending anyone unless there's someone that, if there is any reference to the smoking of marijuana and they were by that, okay, right?
Right. See, and I always think of Jimi Hendrix whenever I hear Purple Haze.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And what was that Purple Haze? And, at that time even, right? But it's really not offending anybody nowadays. And this is hilarious because my wife and I love to get involved in discussions about, society, any aspect of, societal issues. We enjoy those conversations, but it'd be really interesting to hear this, a follow-up to our conversation now, 10 years from now and see how we feel about our questions and answers. But the key is knowing that we're definitely in a time where it's definitely more in front, right? What's being said? Is it okay to be said? What do the things mean? And what do they mean to certain groups of people, right? We try to be very, very careful there to make sure that we don't cross certain lines, right? There are certain things that maybe George Carlin or Eddie Murphy or whatever that old comedian was, back in...
Yeah, Robin Williams or any of those guys, yeah.
Yeah, right? I don't remember who. There was another guy from New York that was very terse in the late 80s, early 90s, whoever that was, right? there are lines that they crossed as comedians and said, hey, I'm going to live with those consequences, right? So we're not willing to bump up against too many of those lines. But as long as people know who we are, what the industry's about, what these flies are about, I think the names are pretty fun, but I do want it to be noted. We are very careful to make sure that there are a lot of lines that we say those aren't worth crossing, because it may be funny to you, but it's really not that funny, right? So you definitely hit those points, Dave. It's just not funny.
No, it's not funny, right? How do you vet? Like, how do you kind of vet once you get a pattern from some of these, some of the gurus or folks out there? Is it like a selling thing? If that pattern sells a certain amount, then you keep it going, or how do you know which like becomes the Purple Haze, these flies that stick around, or are you always just mixing in new fly patterns, testing?
That's it. We were always mixing in new fly patterns. We try to cull the herd, each year to around the tune of what we're bringing in. And then if we're bringing in outside of a given category, right, that category can just grow. So if we bring in, 80 new patterns one year, we do try to make sure we're trimming the fat from the bottom end of our assortment to make room for them and bandwidth for those. But, you don't always know, right? If you have an existing fly with a really good track record that ends up kind of moving into your quiver, those are home runs. I mean, we know that these flies already work. We know they already sell, and we'd love to work with a specific designer on those patterns. But other than that, yeah, it's instinctual. It's experience amongst the entire team, right? We talk to the designer. We do talk to our sales reps. These are guys that travel the country visiting fly shops, right? Showing our products because they're in front of a lot of people every year that are heavily involved directly in our space. And then we fish the flies, right? We talk to people that fish the flies, have our guides that are on the water, 80 to 180 days. Have any of those guys fished these flies to, put them on 2 rods a day for 120 days and see, how it works. So once we've vetted them to the best of our ability, and sometimes it's just like that fly looks killer. The profile's good. The flotation is good if it's a dry, or if it's a fly that needs to sink, right? What's its sink rate going to be? What are we trying to make this fly accomplish? Do we want it to be floating with neutral buoyancy as some aspect of a hatch? Or do we want that fly to literally drop 6 feet in 2 seconds and stay there? So once in a while, with a lot of experience amongst the team, we say, yeah, that fly's never been fished, and that specific fly is going to crush it. So we'll build them. We'll take a look once they get here from our factory. Then we'll spread them out to our sales team. We'll go out and fish them a little bit and say, now we need a tweak or a change, or yes, that one fishes just like we thought it would. And at the end of the day, the anglers across the globe are the ones that tell us which ones we hit out of the park and which ones we didn't.
That's right. Perfect. Okay. Well, we're going to do the quick fly shop shout out here to start to take us out of this episode. But give us anything else we missed on MSC. I know right now as we speak, the fly website is under construction, but anything else we miss as far as the brand, the history, the flies, anything else before we start to take it out of here?
No, probably 500 things, Dave.
Yeah, probably 500. How many SKUs you guys, how many patterns do you have? Just give us that number roughly. Do you have any idea how many? Do you have like 1,000 patterns or something?
We have roughly 2,300 patterns spread across 6,000 SKUs. So, once you include size range in there, if you average 3 sizes per pattern, there are 6,000 SKUs. So we have just over 2,300 different patterns with more to come.
Wow. That's a lot. Good. Okay. Well, let's do our Fly Shop Friday shout out. And this is presented by Skwala Fishing. SkwalaFishing.com is, I've been wearing, I don't know what you have for a technical hoodie, like a sun hoodie, but it's been something I pretty much wear all the time and been wearing. I'm not sure how they do it. They've got a little mix of wool in it, but shout out to Skwala. That's our presented by in this segment. But who for you, the fly shop, you guys have fly shops all around the country. Who's your local? Do you have a local fly shop or a company you want to give a shout out to here?
We have a couple. I would love to do a very, very localized. We're in a small town. We're a town of about 5,000 people now. It used to be smaller. In Columbia Falls, Montana. I'd love to give a shout out to Hillary and Eben at Lary's Fly Shop. And at the same time, would love to give a shout out to Justin Lawrence and his team over at Lakestream Fly Shop. They're both killing it in different ways. And we're glad to have them both right in our backyard.
Amazing. Yeah, we'll put links to the show notes to those And every chance we get, we try to, I know like you said, the importance of the local fly shops, kind of keeping that going strong. So we'll put that out there. And so as we get into this, I got a couple quick little rapid fire to pick your brain on, then we'll take it out of here. This is basically, I want to just pick your brain on some easy ones. One would be, we talk fly patterns. So you're a guide, you hear about guide flies and things like that. Is there a pattern that is just like your go-to in the box? One pattern you always have there no matter where you are? Trout fishing, I guess.
If I had, and I preface this by saying I do fish quite a few of the much newer patterns, but if you put me on Earth by myself in a place I've never fished for a month and I could only have 3 flies that were subsurface flies, I would never leave the house without a rubber legs, which is our flexi girdle bug, our girdle bugs, a zebra midge, and a prince nymph. The classics, right? We can talk new patterns in Euro style nymphing or, double tungsten, whatever it might be. But, let's remember the classic flies that work as good today as they ever have. I kind of forgot your question because I got so excited.
No, that was it. You just nailed it. That's it. You gave us 3.
Yeah, those are 3, but those are only nymphs, and I can't pigeonhole myself to nymphing because I, prefer to fish a dry fly. If I had to if I could have 2 dries that I would never be without in my personal fishing, what do I always have? I never go fishing with a dry fly without black beetles, which is a very underserved category, Dave. If you're a beetle angler, I want you to try beetles from the 1st of July through the middle of October. The beetle is absolutely deadly. We have a few great beetles. There are a number of beetles on the market, but not a ton because they're not fished as much as they should be. I would never leave the house to go fishing on a trout river without beetles. And beyond that, I just want to fish golden stones all the time. So throw that in there as well.
There you go. Golden stones. Love the stone. That's perfect. Okay. And we talked indicators a little bit on that. When you are nymph fishing, are you still using indicators? What would be the indicator you would use? Or are you more into the Euro stuff now?
No, I'm while nymphing, I cannot unlock myself from the airlock indicator. They cast the way that cap twists onto my leader. I've fished them all. The vast majority, I can't get away from the airlock myself.
Perfect. That's awesome. And what about your automobile? So I've been watching this. It's funny. Henry Ford. I'm kind of into these documentaries and stuff. But you got this car. You can any car. Doesn't matter. Whatever car. Money is no object. What's your ultimate car? Do you have it now, or what would it be?
Hell yeah, I have it now, Dave.
You do. you got it. Or is that big of a deal? I'm always curious, like maybe cars aren't that big of a deal for some people.
No, it's a great one, because cars are always fun. And really cars are like boats. You can't do it all with one, right? You have to have multiple. So I have a plastic boat that I can drag through the woods. I have a row skiff, the classic skiff, by the way, the best rowing boat in the world. For my standard, drift boat fishing, I have my whitewater raft, which happens to be a super Puma, which is a great fishing raft that can also handle heavy water. And then I have the jet boat, and that's been a great family boat as well. So I have a couple of kids now, beautiful little kids, and everyone loves. My wife is my fishing partner, right? So if I'm fishing, I prefer and want to be fishing with her, and we've been fishing together for years. So we do have the jet boat, we got the raft, we got the drift boat, and we have the little drag it through the woods and over the rocks boat. And I think cars are the same way. But if I had to have one do-all vehicle, it would be, well, you can't buy it. It would be 6 doors and a 10-foot bed. I don't think they make pickup trucks long enough.
Oh, right. Yeah, big bed.
That's right. I want, they have short beds now because they're easier to park. Well, I don't want to live in a place where I have to worry about parking too much. So I would prefer a 10-foot bed, but I have to settle for an 8-foot bed. I think 6 doors would be awesome because then you could put everybody in it super comfortably with a lot of leg room. They don't have that, so I'm more than happy with my truck, which is the F350 4-door, 8-foot bed, and let's go ahead and keep the diesel.
There you go. Yeah, so you got the big. That's awesome. So you got the big Ford. Perfect segue, because after hearing the history, I'm not sure if you know the history of Ford, but it's interesting. He's definitely a unique person. But yeah, I mean, I think that's it right there. Like, there's all sorts of room for improvement. So even with your great Ford 6 doors, we'll pass this on to Ford when we talk to them and see if they can put that together.
Yeah, let's see how long they can make that bad boy and tell them you have at least one person that is guaranteed to buy.
Exactly. Okay, and the final one is on a tip. So we're going to be fishing, like I said, we got multiple trips. We got a couple big ones. One's going to be on the South Fork, and we're going to be floating it. What would be your tip for us? We're on the river. Have you fished the South Fork, or do you fish both South Fork and Henry's Fork?
Yes, I would be an extremely poor person to ask about the South Fork. Right, the group I worked with on the outfitting side for years, we did not guide on the South Fork River. As much as I would have loved to have learned that fishery, just an ungodly fish population, a phenomenal diversification of species over there between the brown trout, the cutthroat, the rainbow trout, the density of fish. Awesome fishery. I just don't know it well at all. I'm more of a, kind of a Ennis, Madison, down through the Henry's Fork guy.
Perfect. So what would be one, would you have from your guide days, one tip for somebody that's heading out to that area for the first time, whether they're fishing lakes or rivers?
Number one, and by far the most important, Dave, if you're going to go fish that region or any region for that matter, and you're going to take a local guide, listen to them. Just listen, absorb what they're telling you, mimic what they do, and literally, absorb that information. You're not paying them just to drive you to the ramp, right? And I know it's not you, it's anyone listening. Where you're paying them for knowledge. When I take a guide, specifically saltwater fishing is when I'm able to, to really be guided. I'm watching and listening to everything that they do and say and putting that in that little data bank in the back of your mind. Because even if you don't do it that way at home, or you do it differently on your river, or you quote unquote, when I was fishing this other river, we did this. That's all great. That's knowledge in your database. But this person is going to give you new knowledge to add to that database from their locale. I think that's by far the most important tip. The other tip I give everybody, if you're fishing dries, if they're not eating it, keep moving, cover new water. If you're fishing nymphs, if you're catching bottom and no fish, go shallower. If you're catching fish, don't change anything. And if you're not catching fish and not catching bottom, go deep.
Perfect. Awesome. All right, Jake, we'll leave it there, and we'll send everybody out to mfcfishing.com if they have questions. And this has been great, man. I appreciate you sharing shedding the light on MFC. I love what you guys have going, and excited to keep working with you on new events as we move forward.
Well, I appreciate it, Dave. It's been a lot of fun.
That is a wrap. You can grab all of the show notes at wetflyswing.com. And please follow us on Instagram and share this episode out with someone you love. Please send me an email, dave@wetflyswing.com, if you have any feedback or want us to put together an episode on this podcast for you. Check in anytime. I hope you enjoyed this podcast and would love to meet up with you on the water. We have new fly fishing schools going all year long and all around the country, so if you want to connect, let's do it right now. All right, time to get out of here. I hope you have a great evening. I hope you have a great morning or great afternoon wherever in the world you are, and I appreciate you for stopping by and checking out the show today. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com.